I want to explain something to you that will come up often if you keep learning sorcery. There is no time. Or maybe you could say there are many timelines, and all of them are you. But maybe that's impossible to explain. Instead, come with me and I'll show you, and maybe the discussion below me will be resolved. One common problem experienced by women when doing womb dreaming is forgetting their purpose when they succeed at getting inside a dream. They even forget something as basic as finding your hands once inside, to test how much rationality you've brought along. Let's follow someone into a dream and see why this happens. You might think at this point in the dream that the dreamer still has a chance to break free, but even looking at the storyline of the dream pulls you further into an alternate timeline. It's unlikely you will escape unless you can stop the dream as soon as possible. It's too late for her now. You can see that she's picked up the dream history, where she's a willing servant to the slave driver farmer. She's even enjoying her role now, which is to plan mischief against the workers. You can see how the inorganic being Scout, masquerading as the farmer, is feeding off their interaction. Let's try this again from the start, to see how things might have gone differently, and she might have rejected the alternate timeline and freed herself to explore the dream without being controlled by the Scout. This time something's different. Her intent to find her hands and stop the dream has managed to activate right away. And she's even remembered to look from her hands to an object and back a few times. She's brought a lot of tonal rationality into the dream with her. Now she's free to continue exploring the dreaming realms, without undue influence by the inorganic beings. This also helps to more fully merge her tonal awareness with that of her Nagual, with that of the dreamer, her double, her energy body. But where do these alternate timelines come from? How can you absorb an entire new history with memories going back for years? To understand that, you have to look at the ultimate basis of reality, as uncovered by sorcerers over the thousands of years. The perceivable reality of human beings flows to us from an energetic mass of inconceivable proportions, which they called the dark sea of awareness. Through internal silence, they learned to perceive it directly, almost as if the eyes alone could be used to see it. Gazing at it in this manner, they saw that human beings are conglomerates of energy fields that have the appearance of luminous balls. Each ball somehow encapsulates or frames specific animate energy, of the kind which flows freely through the dark sea. They notice that each of those luminous balls is attached to the dark sea of awareness at a point that is even more brilliant than the luminous ball itself. Those shamans called that point of juncture the assemblage point, because they observed that it is at that spot that perception takes place. They found out that our perceivable reality consists of trillions of feelings and sensations transmitted back to us from that dark sea of awareness, based on where our assemblage point focuses. Even physical matter, time and space are the result of that stream of sensations and feelings coming back to us from the dark sea. When the flow of feelings and sensations is altered because that point of assemblage focuses on a different location in the dark sea, the resulting reality can be just as real as the one we're used to, and many come with their own timeline, their own history of you living in that place, which you can often remember going back for decades. In fact, the old seers mapped out 600 such worlds to which a human being could change if they so choose, as long as the being they inhabit in the new world is part of the same strand of what they called cyclic beings. Carlos likened this to a beaded curtain, saying you can switch to any being on your own strand, but not to a being on another strand. These alternate timelines may sound like a new topic to some of the readers of Carlos Castaneda, but they are in fact central to how our sorcery works at all levels. For starters, you can systematically explore them through the practice of recapitulation. Many amazing things can happen during recapitulation if you do your best to remove your internal dialogue, despite needing to remember all the events on your list. Longer durations help greatly, as it takes a while for the assemblage point to move far enough to produce vivid results. Since the eyes are closed, we can only simulate here what the person doing the recap is seeing. It looks like this meeting has ended, but let's hang out and see what happens during the hours from 2 to 4 a.m. when most of the city is sleeping. The easiest time to assemble new worlds. At this point, you might make the mistake of believing that alternate timelines only show up during some form of closed-eye dreaming, or perhaps through strange meditation techniques. At the least, you might have concluded that you have to close your eyes to perceive them, but nothing could be further from the truth. Your very waking world is merely a continuous flow of the timeline into which you were born, and that flow can be altered if you learn to move your assemblage point through removal of the internal dialogue, and with the aid of tensegrity and perhaps darkness. The new timelines available to you by that method show up as videos in the air, except that as time goes by, you realize those videos also carry a history which you immediately know, just by viewing one for a few seconds. Using this method, you can view timeline after timeline, floating in front of you, until you find one you'd like to live in for a while, and with experience you can travel right into it, shirt, boots and all. It looks like the lights are going off now. Let's watch through the eyes of this tensegrity practitioner as the second attention sites develop, and see how they change on the way to silent knowledge. Carlos gave a lecture about this, so we know in general what a given site indicates about their assemblage point location. Notice the colored dots. These are an indication of the assemblage point having moved down the back a little. Now it's moved a bit more, perhaps below the shoulder blades, as you can see the glowing cobwebs which are left on the floor when the feet move. You must not forget at any time that all of this only takes place if you remove your internal dialogue, so that your assemblage point can move. The assemblage point has now reached the lower back, where pieces of your energy body begin to swirl around vividly. Those can be seen earlier, but don't become as vivid until you near the infamous shift below. An inorganic being is making its presence known, They often manifest on the puffs of your energy body and can even teach you to use those for producing dream bubbles, remote viewing orbs, or for shape-shifting. All these are activities common when the assemblage point is at or below your lower back. Now, the assemblage point has switched sides on the body, going all the way below on the back side, then back up to the front. It's entered the phantom realms where whitish light appears on surfaces. This is also known as the place of no pity, because grief and worry over the past actions of your imaginary self lose their meaning here. If you can remove not only all traces of your internal dialogue, but also all expectations or wants, your assemblage point can drift sideways a bit and reveal an alternate reality on the whitish light surface. With the help of an ally, you can walk right off into those worlds, shirt, boots, and all. One important thing to understand when practicing darkroom tensegrity is that as the assemblage point moves, the sights transform. Earlier stages that are very vivid and exciting give way to the next thing. It's only at the end of the path that you can summon these individually on demand. At first, you just have to accept that you crossed a new threshold, such as this movement from the whitish light to silent knowledge. As your assemblage point comes into alignment with that of your energy body, the energy body itself can vanish, and you'll be using the eyes of your double. This becomes obvious when dreams form in the air while you are still fully awake. Carlos called these videos in the air, but there's so much more to them than you can imagine at this point. After you've completed your series of tensegrity moves, and someday even find yourself in silent knowledge at the end of them, you might want to go sit down and just watch what Carlos called the wall. The wall is a virtual surface on which the second attention can focus to generate silent knowledge manifestations. However, behind this, if you look around 8 feet away, you might catch a glimpse of the inside of your luminous shell, which could appear to be less solid than one would expect. Don Juan once suggested that it was composed of shimmering layers, so close together it gives the appearance of solidity. You must always remind yourself, or you will become distracted by practical magic, that you only go further if you develop deeper silence. There's so much more to removal of the internal dialogue than just getting rid of words, but such things must be experienced for yourself and can't be spoken about. When you practice the type of gazing you see here, you begin to clean your link to intent, and only if it's very clean can you enter into the alternate timelines which will present themselves through seeing. But seeing comes in many forms, so be sure not to focus only on the easy-to-view videos in the air. Different methods are more appropriate for different situations. One method Carlos advised us to seek is the whirl which spits out text. You'll likely find that one to be somewhat elusive. One way the new seers knew everything that the old seers did was through time travel. Their connection to the old seers gave them the path they needed to go back in time and witness those events themselves. The key to being flexible enough to do this can only be learned on your own through repeated viewing of the timelines which freely present themselves to you when you are absolutely free of internal dialogue in any form. At first, you realize you are in both places at the same time, both outside watching and inside experiencing it close up. But eventually you learn to literally fly into the scene, shirt, boots and all.